Captain America. Oh, sorry, he's just Captain now, isn't he?
For me, Captain America represents a lot of different things, and I don't think the term, America should be one of those representations.
Captain represents a lot of things, America isn't one of them. Well, he caused the latest controversy, which dragged Disney into the culture wars. The issue is, when Hollywood Reporter comes out, and look, this just proves that Disney can't escape them, like they ever tried. Disney's been wading headfirst into the culture wars, launching missiles at their enemies, since quite frankly, as far as I can go back on the internet, it basically covers my entire life. So to say that, we just keep trying to escape, we can't help it, folks, is an attitude that the media has had for quite a while, as if Disney isn't in control of its own destiny. They just get carried away with things. But while the studio desperately tries to avoid politics, their shows are making waves just by barely slipping off message. Now, this could just be me, but I have a feeling that something titled Captain America would be quite a big part of the message. Look, if you make a movie about Captain Britain and he doesn't drink tea, I'll declare war myself. But the most interesting thing about the article is that Disney can't escape the culture wars. I mean, Iger has said that we want to get out of the culture wars in 2023. And then Iger says we want to quiet down the culture wars in 2022. And I know the picture is the same on both articles. And the title is basically the same on both articles. And the author is the same on both articles. Look, she may have just copied the old article and changed a bit of the words. I don't know. But what it does show is that this is a message that keeps getting trotted out all the time. Oh, we're just trying, folks. We're desperately trying to get out of this thing. We want to. Just never seems to quite happen. That's why after 2023, he also said it again in 2024. Those are just recent examples, and it could lead you to believe that this is a recent trend of that we're trying. We've had years, but maybe years aren't enough because Disney is a massive corporation. The real question is, why are they doing it, and how long has this been going on for? Perhaps even what caused it, or at least what gave them the confidence to want to try. Here we were talking about, Disney doesn't want to offend anybody, but it's just getting caught up in a culture war. In 2018, that's 7 years ago for anyone who wants to feel particularly old, because for the true start of it, or at least as far back as I'm going to bother digging, as I think this proves my point on its own. In 2015, there was an article about Disney and their history, about a big historical lie. And it goes on to talk about the Walt Disney's Company. They wanted to cash in an obsession in the early 1990s with a park dedicated to American history. Yes, it was going to cover American heritage and be part amusement, part serious. So the edutainment style, which is basically a way of slipping a message in under your defenses by pitching it as entertainment rather than educational, which you might fact-check it. That's why they were going to make it a mix of serious and fun. The thing is that the Disney CEO at the time, Michael Eisner, highlighted the serious side of the park by proclaiming it would reject the Pollyanna view of American history, and it would show the Civil War with all of its racial conflict. Can you see where this is going? Disney have been obsessed with this crap since 1990 at least. They were going to make a park dedicated to it, even tackling the Vietnam War. This approach, though, attracted criticism from all over the map, with people on the left ridiculing the idea that you would bother to put Goofy in some mock-up of history, with the opposing side arguing that if we're going to have a schlocky version of American history, could at least be a schlocky, patriotic, and heroic version of American history. That would be my opinion. If it comes down to a choice, I would rather Captain America have the national treasure moments of, oh, look, I'm holding the Constitution.
It is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. People don't talk that way anymore.
Than being ashamed to say the second half of his own name.
America.
But it does say that, alas, Disney scrapped its plans for a history theme park due to widespread skepticism. And when they say skepticism, they mean everyone took the piss out of the abomination that they were going to make of American history. Because one side thought it was stupid that Disney were going to do it, and the other side thought it was stupid because you were going to be ashamed of your own heritage. Some of the least fun people on the planet are those that despise themselves. Seriously, if you don't like yourself, how is anyone else supposed to? Thing is, though, this showcases Disney's desire to have done this for decades. They wanted to do it back in the 1990s. The only reason they didn't is because both sides took the piss. They realized it would not have been monetarily profitable to do in any way, because they wouldn't have had either side supporting them. It was a unilateral condemnation of Disney even considering wanting to go down this path. Not because one side didn't agree with the destruction of your own history. The history flap demonstrated that though Americans were taking an extraordinary interest in the nation's past, they disagreed fervently about how it should be represented, in part due to the truism that he who controls the past controls the future. Why do you think prequels are so popular?
The political equivalent of the house wine at a suburban Indian restaurant. Disconnected to the point of autism.
Thing is, though, at this point in history, the side that wanted to destroy history also didn't like the corporations. So the idea of aligning with Disney itself, what are you doing? If you took those people and put them in 2025, their words would be, that's a bit cringe, innit, bruv? But if you fast forward a bit, you get articles like this from a site called The Culture War Reporters. And this was in 2014, 11 years ago. If you want to feel old, even back then they were talking about Disney movies and gender roles. Kat said, honestly, I feel like they're just trying to make strong female characters without actually having to change the tropes that are being used. They're taking the easy way out. Elsa only gets a little substance because she's in the role of the villain. Neither really possess any character trait that makes them endearing. They're just a vessel for viewers to feel an association with. That was in 2014. No one's even talking about representation at that point in time. The idea being that you need to be represented, and so to see yourself, they just put an empty vessel on the screen so that you project yourself into it. As you swing from the masculine to the feminine, you'll get different ideas of what a story needs. And one of them is you need empty vessels in order to project yourself onto. But the main thing with this is the culture war was already being talked about in 2014. And this site itself, when I go back to the comments, some of the earliest I can find are in 2011, talking about Disney. So in 1990, they had the desire, but neither side were really into it. By 2014, the battle lines had been drawn. One side started campaigning. This is definitely a criticism about Disney, and they wanted Disney to change. They were giving signals that actually one side was beginning to agree with the corporate overlords, as long as they did it their way and gave in to their demands. What happens over the next few years seemed to be basically henpicking at Disney, trying to break them down. It's basically a nagging wife. As far back as 18 years ago, the press kicked off the cruel reality of Disney's world, claiming that, well, people thought he was an old man that all children loved. Actually, he's far from the genial figure of legend. He was a troubled man, lonely, reclusive, and depressive, notoriously ill-treated his staff, close friends, and was ferociously right-wing and anti-red during the 40s and 50s. You can stop now, I'm already a fan. You don't have to sell him to me anymore. But of course, this is by The Guardian, and so they are a perfect weather vane of morality, in that as long as you do the opposite of what they say, it's probably a correct path to heaven. The articles are all over the place. 2013, attacking Walt Disney and his Italian-style Disney World. They came out in 2014 and pulled up Disney on things that they'd been doing in the late 1940s.
My dear, you should learn to be admired in silence.
And in 2018, we still had the attitude that Disney just doesn't want to offend anybody. It's just getting caught up in the culture wars. We're in a strong river. The water currents are just sweeping them away. Like, they are incapable of making their own decisions. They can't help it. This is just a situation which is being forced upon them. They'd love to get out of it if they can, but they're just drowning in a sea of blue hair, the complete spectrum of light, and rather suspiciously shaped silicon objects. Don't you understand? Their company aims for a wide swath of the viewing public. The company loves to ride the middle because that's where the money is. But they're just taking all these public hits. They're going from the middle to riding the edges. Edge, singular. And it's just startling to watch. And at this point, there was still the attitude that Disney wasn't trying to take one particular side. No, they were pissing off everybody equally. Look, it's not just one side which had been incensed with Disney actions, kneeling during a national anthem, but some of the other side commentators criticized Disney for having the gall to make shows for a white working class base. How dare they? You would think normally this would be enough to make Disney choose a side back in 2018, when they saw that one group were like, why are you disrespecting my nation? And the other group are like, we're racists. We want you to discriminate against a group of people. Why are you making shows for them? Bang! Just tell them to piss off there and you could have saved all of your problems. Instead, they looked at this and seemed to go, well, we don't like America either, so we're going to side with these people. Oh, I guess we'll just hate them as well and discriminate against them just like you want. That's how you end up at just 3 years ago. Oh, people are wondering, how on earth did Disney become embroiled in the culture wars? As if by this point it wasn't already obvious just from the things that I've showed you. The company has been addressing its historical racism and sexism, adding disclaimers to films and altering theme parks. But these moves, they've stirred contempt as well as approval. I can't imagine why.
What are you doing? What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Again, I should probably point out this is The Guardian. Remember, 15 years before this article, they were one of the ones that just henpecked Disney into their own destruction. And 15 years, I don't know how we got here. Well, it couldn't have been me, could it? I just don't know, despite the fact that we were asking for it all along. Very little ammunition is required for a culture war these days. Again, taking legitimate complaints and then ignoring them because they belong to the side that you're not a part of. But then we get Bob Chapek in 2022, the guy that I think actually might have wanted to get them out of it. He was a money man.
Again, I want to respect legacy. I want to respect what this brand is. We may be even more precious about what's Disney than the consumer base is. If the consumer base has more elasticity than we've traditionally had in terms of defining what's Disney, then we probably ought to listen to our audience.
You know, the great thing about money men, they actually like money.
But it also puts extra pressure on us because they don't think of us as a company. And when we do things that normal companies might do, sometimes it creates a friction because all of a sudden they're like, why are you doing that? But of course, we have shareholders that have different expectations. So one of the pleasures of my job is trying to balance all the different constituencies.
And if a money man sees that this attitude is scaring off your giant customer base and is only liked by a small few of evil people, then you ignore the evil people and start pandering to the actual majority.
In the end of the day, if we follow the consumer, we're going to be great.
That's probably why he decided to stay neutral. In March 2022, Chapek sent a memo round to all of his staff, which contained the following quote on why Disney had not addressed the act. Corporate statements do very little to change the outcomes or minds. Instead, they are often weaponized by one side or the other to further divide and inflame. Simply put, they can be counterproductive and undermine more effective ways to achieve change. This is him trying to play both sides. Like, look, if I say anything, I'm going to piss somebody off. And while, yes, I would like to do change, appealing to his activist base at the company.
People love to get out there and say Disney's too woke, Disney's become too politically correct. Are they right? Do they have a point?
We want our content to reflect the rich, diverse world that we live in.
I think we can do it more effectively if the world doesn't hate us. Of course, if you are a group of people which has been hated by everybody your entire life, largely because you're insufferable, you actually won't appreciate the last bit because you've never been effective. The world recoiling at your presence is just a daily occurrence to you. You think that's normal. The thing is, though, this idea of we don't want to divide and inflame simply goes back to the company's love of riding the middle, because that's where the money is. I don't think Bob Chapek was wrong. And yes, well, obviously, he did still want to push it. His idea of maybe we shouldn't piss off the majority of our audience is still the correct one. If anything, I think that makes Bob Chapek more dangerous, because he had the right idea of how not to piss people off, while also still wanting to push things in the right direction. Bob Chapek was intelligent enough to be dangerous as an activist, because he realized that to be effective, you shouldn't be seen as one. Of course, just because one person is intelligent, you're still on the side of stupidity and evil, so that was never gonna last, was it? This basically prompted immediate backlash, and the Disney employees started to stage a walkout and demand that he back down, do as they say, and capitulate. More than 100 employees in different parts of the company walked out on Tuesday and started staging a protest outside of the company itself, which if you're taking your young kids to Disneyland and you see that, yeah, that's not going to really put you in the holiday spirit, is it? Especially when they're ripping you off to such a degree.
We're so blessed to have the greatest content creators.
Clearly, something had to change, and while my personal preference would have been fire everybody. Fire everything! Well, our dear Bob here, possibly because he wasn't actually in charge of the company, because Iger was still hanging around the headquarters like a bad smell, or as an angry ghost with an axe to grind. Bob broke.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day for this very important session.
Firstly, he's reading it. Secondly, this looks like a hostage video. And thirdly, just listen to his cadence.
Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day for this very...
He's talking like he's an infant school teacher. Kindergarten, as the Americans say for some reason, even though that's German. I've never understood that, to be honest. I've got this really musical cadence, and I'm really glad that you're here to join us today. Like he's presenting a children's TV show.
Stay behind that board.
No, I shan't.
You are too brown. Oh, go on then, we'll let you out.
Today, we're going to go out and say bogeys as loud as possible.
I hope you've all read my most recent note, in which I pledge to be a better ally.
Basically all you need, isn't it? I mean, just look at his face. I've also always loved sign language interpreters, by the way, on television, just because of how they make me. Every time, it feels like a tiny person has got trapped in the television and is desperately trying to get my attention during it. Help me! Of course, during all this, there was various other talk about how Disney was now targeting Gen Z and millennials, all because they wanted to, provide them inclusion. Disney is getting better at it. Inclusion obviously meaning the lack of standards, because if you include everybody, then you're not judging them by literally anything.
To be clear, you don't think Disney's too woke.
I think Disney is a company that has survived for 100 years by catering to its audience, and it's going to thrive the next 100 years by catering to its audience.
And of course, comments about how they want to educate children about all this kind of stuff. Of course, there were people even at the time going, look, this is definitely going to fail. Whereas others decided that actually it wasn't Disney's fault. No, we're back to, there's just a tide that's sweeping them away. They're just not in control of their own actions, and look, Chapek could have reversed it if he wanted to, but the staff wouldn't let him. I mean, he could have just fire everything! I too think he was held hostage by his employees, but only because he didn't take the option to literally solve the problem. Of course, they're not going to blame the staff because maybe they agree with the staff. No, they blame it on the governor for some reason. Then, of course, you had people like the Telegraph calling anyone who disagreed with Disney's new stance and commitment to the cause mid-century German. Even in May, we're like, actually, no, they're trapped. They're just the latest casualty of the war. They're trapped by it. It's not their fault. They don't have any decision. They're only a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Can't expect them to be in control of the very products they create. That would be stupid. And by November, some people had thought that actually Disney was paying the price, and they were going to learn a lesson from that. Just maybe 5 or 6 months later, the reign of the chief woke officer is coming to an end because they blamed Chapek. Yep, they thought him backing down over that is why he got fired. Oh, my sweet summer child. Then, of course, we had Iger come in. You've already seen these. No, I've returned. I am the savior on the mount, come to remove the culture war from Disney. We're not going to do this anymore. I know Chapek literally said this before and then had to backtrack. I'd really love to know whether he was involved in that. I would really love to know if he was involved in that.
I pledge to be a better ally.
Just to come back months later and go, I can't believe he did that, folks. I never would have done that myself. But this is in 2022 November. Then he repeated it again the next year after not doing anything about it for a year. This is one of the reasons why I believe that Chapek would have changed something where everyone knows Iger never will. When Chapek came out and said, look, we're staying out of this, we're not going to comment, the staff kicked up a fuss and started immediately protesting outside. When Iger says it, repeatedly, for years, nothing. No response, no comments, no going to the press. And I think it's just because they know it's all talk. They know nothing's going to happen, and so they know they don't need to do any actions to stop it. Months later in April, the woke Disney feud. It's not just a power struggle, it's a culture. It's like they've just discovered it. These words have been used since at least 2014. And here we are 9 years later going, look, I don't know whether you've heard about this, but this might not just be about power. This might actually be a fight for culture. Don't you understand? This has been a war for a long time, but the other side started fighting back now. How dare they? They're ruining our plan. And then 6 months later, after his last announcement, he repeated, I just don't want to be drawn into it, bruv. Look, all those shows and movies I've published in the last 6 months. Look, I can't help it, folks. I don't want to be drawn into this. A few months later, no, we're going to quiet it down again. And after having lost their encounters with the people they were winding up before, no, look, we are withdrawing from it. We're not going to see anything about it from us ever again. That they said in December 2024. Look, they've only had years, folks. What do you expect? Bob Iger he's desperately trying to avoid hot buttons. Politics is bad for business. This is something that they realized in the 1990s. But when you've got an idiot like Bob Iger in charge in 2025, he's too thick to understand what people knew decades ago. I mean, he can repeat it, he just can't actually internalize it and then act. This is why, even after all of these comments, people are still listing Disney as the top 5 culture wars battles of the year. Multiple years after saying he was going to stop, it's still being listed in the top 5. And after all that, you dare say that Disney can't escape the wars. Modern Disney was born in the wars, molded by it. They haven't seen morality since Walt Disney died. And yet still, they are trying to go, Disney can't help it, man. They're just swept along with the currents. They're trying to escape. They desperately want to escape. But you won't let them. They have gone from going, look, if you don't like our show, then you're just a bigot, to, if you want to keep bringing up all the stuff we're doing, you're just a bigot. It's not our fault. Our company decisions are your problem. It was a stupid thing to say in 2018, and it's stupid to say now. The only reason they didn't do it in the 1990s is because everybody took the piss out of them, and they didn't think it would be monetarily profitable because every single person called them an idiot. But then, over time, the media henpecked them through various different attacks, from banned podcasts to academic papers and mainstream articles. They were presented with the idea that, well, you know, this side has changed. They don't mind corporations anymore. In fact, they've seen that you have a lot of power over culture, but also a lot of power to control a message and the media that people consume. If we have every single institution, if we have social media, media and we have entertainment media. We basically control all things that people consume, every single message they'll hear, and it's like any algorithm. The quality of what goes in determines the quality of what comes out. They thought they had it made. And so Disney, not wishing to piss off both sides, well now, one side's with us. This might be how we solidify ourselves in power for decades. We might be able to influence culture, influence people, and get them to finally do what we've always wanted, to finally join us on the ideas that we've wanted to do since Michael Eisner in 1990. They've always wanted to do it. They just never had enough allies to do it before. And the media and the staff henpecked them until it gave them the perception that actually, folks, we could do this. We could be profitable and we could win. There are many people who will just go along with whatever the dominant ideology is. They just want an easy life. They just want to be told what and they'll believe it. I have better things to do than worry about the philosophy of this idea or that. I want an easy life. What's society like? Okay, that's me then. And to be honest, if anything, kind of surprising to me it didn't work. And I think the main reason why it didn't work is because it built in incompetence into the structures that they were now creating. Quite simply, if your ideology praises weakness and incompetence, and so you fill your company with weak, incompetent people, you're going to lose any kind of battle. They're literally too stupid to follow through with the instructions and to do it properly. They won't know where the line is. They won't be like Bob Chapek and think, actually, maybe we should be a bit smart about this. They will just go forth, hammer at home, be really blunt and obvious, and think we can win because I'm smarter than you, because they're too stupid to know what they don't know. And so we end up here with articles complaining about how Anthony Mackie was just taken out of context, despite the fact that he has a history of saying this stuff before. And there was another very ugly part of it, in that some people were saying that his promotion to Captain America was simply a DEI move. Well, as Anthony Mackie has pushed for that himself.
You know, if we got to divvy it as a percentage, divvy it out, at least for here as leading men, that we can go in and push for and push the envelope.
Thinks that's a good idea. It'd be strange if he was insulted by the fact that he was a DEI hire. I'm not saying he'd be wrong to be insulted. Of course it's insulting to anyone that you were only hired because of how you look rather than your talent. But it's also an insult that he's pushed for himself. I just don't know why he'd complain about being put into positions that he hasn't earned, when that's something he's pushed for and thinks it's a good idea.
As a black man playing that role, my big push with Marvel, with everybody, is hire the best person for the job.
The best people for the job.
Even if it means we're going to get the best 2 women, we're going to get the best 2 men, we're going to get the best 2 that, the best 2 this. Fine.
In every separate group, regardless of how competent they are in comparison to the other people in the other groups. Oops. So no, I am not going to accept this false narrative that, oh, they just can't escape. Oh, they never wanted to be in it, bro. They're desperately trying to escape it, bro. Why won't you just leave them alone so they can leave the culture wars, bro? You keep dragging them back in. No, Disney is the person at the front of the room swinging at anyone that comes near him, and the one time anyone comes back and shows any aggression to him is that, oppression, victimhood. I don't know why you'd been doing... Look at all these statements that I've said. I've said loads of times I don't want to be a part of this, as he kicks a child in the face. Your words mean nothing. What matters is your actions. And you're still doing everything that you've wanted to do for decades. And there is so much evidence. This is so obvious that this entire idea, even since 2018, it just seems like you're running interference. I don't understand how you could even attempt to believe it yourself, let alone actually believe it. If you do even a modicum of research, if you just scroll down a couple of Google searches, you will disprove your own idea. And so if you don't do that, I mean, at best, you're willfully ignorant. But as it seems to have been the media that have henpecked Disney and given them the confidence to follow through on an impulse they've had since the 1990s, then in my opinion, the media have as much a role in Disney doing this as Disney themselves. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe. More videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.